million people in India suffer some sort of a disability, development or otherwise. So the objective is to see that people working in this sector at least get a background of all the guidelines that is there. What are the challenges, the learnings that you already have done before the COVID?
Welcome to this webinar. Vardhan is holding a webinar on best practices related to intellectually challenged children. Just to
Yes,
introduce the panelists, we have Vaishali Pai from Tamahar. To tell you a little bit about Tamahar, Tamahar was founded in 2009 to enable the children with brain damage and their families to live happily. Vaishali has been an occupational therapist and a gold medalist in her BA and her MA degree from Mumbai. She has over 3 decades of experience working with the Spastic Society, Malya Hospital, and Vaidehi Institute of Rehabilitation Center. She's also a member of the Executive Committee of Disability NGO Alliance, which is called DNA Bangalore. Welcome, Vaishali, for the webinar.
Thank you, Gauri. My pleasure.
Thank you. We have Sugandha Sukrutraj from AMBA. AMBA was founded in 2004 with a goal to benchmark a curriculum leading to employment using the information technology for adults with moderate to severe intellectual disability in India. Sugandha Sukrutraj is a founder of the AMBA, was also awarded a Ashoka Fellowship in 2007. She has an experience of 14 years in intellectually disabled adults. She has developed the learning model, and under her guidance, AMBA has scaled up to 16 states in India. Welcome, Sugandha.
Thanks, Gauri.
Thank you, Sugandha, for joining us. We have from Dia Foundation, Maria as Santa Maria, formerly known as Sarah. We call her Sarah. She's a master's in special education from Milwaukee, and work experience in job coaching prompted her to start up a vocational training for differently abled children. It was her vision to start up Dia Foundation in 1999 to see the individuals with disability and their families with a smile. Welcome, Sarah, on the webinar. Thank you for joining us. I move on to Jayashree from Jayashree is a very person. She's the management trustee. She's been working with differently able students, holding a master's degree in arts, and has a desire, interest in social work. Jayashree has worked with various parts of the country with ADI, Delhi, Autism Center in Chennai, Rainbow Center of Autism, which is a part of Spastic Society of Karnataka. She is involved in various social works and an active member of Social Venture Partner. AMOG is actually a charitable foundation of adults with special needs. Welcome, Jayashree, for the webinar. We have from Vardhan panel, we have Anil, who has just introduced all of us. I have my colleague, Mr. Vijay, who is a postgraduate from TISS Mumbai. He has a vast experience in banking, MFI sector, NGO, incubation, education, livelihood sectors. He has been associated with Akshara Foundation, Basics, and Catalyst Management Board. Welcome, Vijay, for the webinar. Over to you, Anil.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Gauri, and thank you all participants here in this discussion. So I'll just give a quick overview as to how we will do the discussions over the next hour. So we plan to have at least about 60 minutes. So that's what we aim to do. We may extend it maybe 5-10 minutes this side, that side. That's fine. So the idea is we have about a couple of questions or topics that we want to take it up and have a little bit of a discussion and come to some sort of a conclusion as to how these topics can be handled as we go forward. Also, the way we have tried to do this, we have tried to bring together on a common platform not-for-profits and people who are working in a select space. So it's not that we are talking of the entire not-for-profit sector or the programs. Specifically, we brought together on the development disability beneficiaries and the entire programs that are going around in that. So we have the pre-COVID, post-COVID issues, which are pretty much common. But I think in the situation that we find ourselves in this particular segment, I can only call it as this is a crisis within a crisis. You have a crisis, and then inside that, there's another crisis which is there. So that for me really sums up the situation that we find ourselves. And also, if you really look at it, we are talking of people who are affected is close to about, I don't know, maybe from the last census, maybe about 28 million to 30 million people in India suffer some sort of a disability, development or otherwise. So that's the number of people that are out there. And in this particular situation, there's a crisis within a crisis that is there. So that's the background in which we want to do it. And the way we want to do this discussion is, we have selected some couple of questions. We will run these questions to the panelists have agreed to discuss on these questions. So the main question, what the main panelists would answer or would give their views, would want to take the points across. And subsequent to that, maybe the other panel members can definitely add on, contribute, or comment on that. And subsequently, then we can open it up if there are any people who who are watching this program, if they have any queries, etc. That can also be taken up. So we would like to finish off each of those questions maybe in about 10 to 15 minutes. So like that, we have about 5 questions. So 5 topics that we would like to take it up. And then we would take it in this format. So the first is we'll pose a topic or a question. One of the panel members would lead the discussion on that, give their initial comments, give their initial observations, then let other panel members contribute, and then the other viewers can take up the questions. So the idea is, at the end of a particular session, the takeaway would be for everyone is, at least on those selected topics, some thinking could have come up, some brainstorming would have happened, some proactive thoughts, etc., may be there, which everybody can take it up in their respective not-for-profits or in their programs, etc., more effectively. So that is what we would do it. So with that introduction, let me start off and let me take the first topic that we want to discuss. So the topic is the guidelines from the government on the disability sector post-COVID. So that's the first, I think that should set the real background as to what has been happening there and what the guidelines are. We have various guidelines which are issued right from 25th of March onwards. There have been a series, you have different authorities. So I only want to ensure, or the objective is to see that people working in this sector at least get a background of all the guidelines that is there, what are the challenges in those guidelines, and if anything. So I would request Dr. Vaishali from Tamahar to lead this crucial introduction that sets the stage for everything. Please go ahead, Doctor.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, thank you, Anil. Yeah, so the government has come up with a host of guidelines, and the ones that we are, let's say from our perspective, from Tamar perspective, we would be interested in would be from the educational background as to what do they plan to do, and they have come out with it very nicely, very systematically. We don't see anything in the space of younger children opening up at least till July end. as of now. Though they are very open and they're expecting people to come up and converse with them, the government that is, to give our inputs. The only point I would like to make is that there is, and the other panelists or anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, but there aren't any specific guidelines as far as the disability sector is concerned. So we don't have anything to focus on what are the challenges in the disability sector. And even if we say that, we can open our preschools or something by July end, can we actually do it? The ones who have children with developmental disability, intellectual impairment, etc. What what should be done for that? I mean, the government, of course, the Commissioner of Disability, etc., have come up and said that they want us to give them ideas about what needs to be done. But I would have liked, like the MCI has come out with guidelines for medicine, it would have been nice if we also got some guidelines about it.
But didn't we have the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities and the other commissioners in the various states? They have issued guidelines. It's not that the guidelines have not been there, but on going through the guidelines, I'm not sure how it is going to really affect or implement or something. So are we saying that those guidelines are very general and pretty vague?
Yes, I mean, they may not be vague, they are pretty clear, but they apply to the general population, probably even in disability to the general population. But let's say, take an example of a person with intellectual impairment who is not going to be able to keep his hand to himself. They may not be willing to wear masks. Social distancing is not something that they can understand very easily. So in that case, the only thing probably we are looking at is to play it safe, not start any of our centers early. Wait and watch. Hopefully, this thing would come up, vaccine, or there could be something that would come up. In the meanwhile, try as many online sessions as we can. But that is about it, according to me.
So what sort of guidelines would really be required, if at all it is possible? Because we all know that those guidelines that are there are more to do with, let's say, with cleanliness and environment and social distancing, etc. So that in this particular space is going to not be practically feasible, including the caregivers, etc. There has to be a constant touch. So are there any guidelines that could have made a better sense or could have helped everyone around?
I guess so, probably, because I can also talk from the service provider's perspective. I'm talking from the beneficiary's perspective. But from the service provider's perspective, let's say that it is not about a big center that is working. It is about an individual therapist who has to work with children and or even with adults and give services. What exactly should we follow? Should we only continue online, which we are doing at the moment? Many a times it doesn't work because we need to demonstrate something actually in close contact, hands-on, in order for people to understand how to do something. Also, there is a limitation about the online sessions. There is a health risk for both the service providers as well as the beneficiary. We are talking about reducing online time, and that is something that we have had to follow right now. So, can we understand what needs to be done? Can we have certain criteria like, okay, you can only service providers will need to provide only services to 3 people in a week? I don't know. I know this is sounding very vague. But how do we arrive at clear-cut directions to service providers as well as the beneficiaries.
Okay, so let's look at what the other panel members would want to contribute to if on the guidelines that have been issued by the government. Does it really take you forward? Yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead, Sugata.
So basically what I've seen is when the government addresses intellectual disabilities, it's just addressed across the board. You know, they don't specifically have any kind of research that is done specifically for intellectual disabilities. I find in Karnataka, we are really lucky. We have DNA that has taken such an initiative to be able to, you know, explore how we should deal with intellectual disabilities. And I think Sarah will be able to talk more about that. Vaishali also could talk more about that. But it is easier to address mainstream disabilities, right? Because you don't have to really look at it differently. But when you look at intellectual disability, you've got to look at the fact that they could digress back without constant intervention, you know, learning, implementation of that learning. So I have tried the last so many years, forget about the COVID part of it, but to get them to actually think differently about our community, the beneficiary community that we address. But it is too complex, I believe. I think we need to get together, some of us, and thrash it out and figure out what it is we need, and then probably send it out to the government for them to be able to then implement the same thing as part of the, you know, the guidelines. I think that's the only way it will happen, Vaishali, and I'm sure Sarah and you know, Jayashree will also agree with that. I think we need to sit together and figure out, because intellectual disability is something you've got to address out of the box. It's not something that everybody is familiar with. Like, I didn't know about this till 20 years ago. I mean, 2000 was the first time I got introduced to this disability. All of us are familiar with the very visible disabilities that are there, you know, but this is a very invisible disability. So I'll stop there and maybe have someone else comment. I think we need to get together and figure out what needs to be there in the guidelines. I don't think the government will be able to fathom that on their own.
Okay, Sarah?
Does that make sense, Vaishali?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. We need to come together and discuss this.
Yeah, and I think that's what we've been doing. I think a lot of us have been having these webinars and, you know, discussing and sharing what we have been doing. We're trying to, you know, get together. DNA had a meeting the other day. We're trying to get together what would be standard operating procedures if we do decide to start. And so it has also set us thinking as to how we should talk to parents and what get their viewpoints also on how, if we were to start, what are the procedures that we should put in place and how could we get parent support on these things, and try to document all those things so that we can all share and come up with our own standards of operating.
No, that's great, because we are in touch with parents all the time, every day. What we've done is we've used ICT effectively to be able to continue with the training. You know, instead of, because all of you know that with intellectual disability, if you leave off training, they're going to digress back, right? They're going to forget everything that you taught them. And the biggest fear for us was that our trainers at the main core center who manage, you know, all the collaborations that we have all over India, if they would forget, it would be disastrous. So I was telling Gauri the other day that what we've done is we've replaced, since most of what we do is leveraging technology to be able to bring in learning appropriate for employment. What we've started to do is, but maybe that's not relevant right now. I think I'll leave it, I'll stick with the.
That's it, yeah. So we're just talking on the government guidelines as such. So I mean, whatever has been issued, whether it's been effective or what, have you been able to find something to use those guidelines, and whether that's real help? So that was a real question that we want to discuss.
Sarah, in your meeting at DNA, what are the points that you put across, you know, did you all come to any conclusion?
No, so we all discussed what could be, possibilities, and probably I think we would be getting back. Each one went back to talk about it with our own institutes and come up with something, and then probably share it with DNA once we put a SOP in place.
Okay, that's great.
So Jayashree, can we have your comments, please? You'll have to unmute.
Yeah, so I'd like to add here, I think whatever Sugandha and Sara and Vaishali said is the same thinking and the same level or same sailing in the same boat, all of us, I think. And to add to what you're talking about, even the National Trust has again called for a meeting. I think, Sara, you're all there for today's meeting, right? They are also wanting to get the view of all of us and then come out. I think no one has made any proper guideline for specific to intellectual disability. So I think even they are not clear on how to go about it. I think they are looking at all of us to come out with some ideas like out of box thinking, like Sugandha said. And then if we can look at some and create a guideline or suggest a guideline to themselves. Actually, I think DNA, that is where the meeting ended, saying that all of us should contribute something to prepare a guideline or suggest a guideline and recommend this to the government to see if they can, take these whatever document and then prepare some guideline out of all the views DNA is recommending. I think that's where we stand. Is it okay, Vaishali? Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely true. Absolutely true. I mean, my point was just that, we are all getting together and having these discussions and, throwing out ideas, but there would have been, would there have been hand-holding top down? It would have also helped us because each of us would think probably within our circles, right? So we need someone who will think broadly, look at the whole scenario and give out certain guidelines is what I was thinking would be a good idea. We are all, DNA is where this stands. We will be having another couple of meetings shortly.
I think one I would like to comment here is like, at least Karnataka is very fortunate that we have formed a body like DNA where all the people who are working under this space are able to come as a platform and discuss. And then a disability commissioner has been very active. And then he's always there for most of the DNA meetings, and then at least there to hear us and then, even guide us on how don't look at this way or don't look at that way, or like, always trying to handhold us and then trying to come out with our whatever we are thinking. And then that's, I think we are fortunate to that extent, because I am also in other forums where I don't think all the states also have the same similar thing who are all working on this space. I think even the other state governments, I don't think anyone has come out with any proper guideline for intellectual disability. I think that's where everyone is standing at this point.
Okay, so that seems to be more or less the unanimous consensus view that not much in terms of guideline support, etc., has come in, and everyone is, the best we can all do is the network, exchange ideas, take the best out of it, adopt the best practices, and keep talking and keep moving up to the channels on top, and make sure that something really shakes them up and we come out with better stuff.
Even WHO has just come out with some health guidelines only. I think other things the government has to really sit with all of us and then come out with something concrete.
Okay, so Gauri, if you are tracking, if there are any questions on this particular topic, if there's anything, maybe you can ask one or two questions from there.
Yeah, I'm tracking. I think it's on track. Like everybody's given a complete consensus that, they all have to sit together and thrash it out.
Okay, fine.
Doing that. So we can proceed to the next one.
Okay, so let's take the next topic. The next topic is, do we have alternate ways to engage with the beneficiaries during this particular difficult period. So are there any alternate ways that each one of you have tried to implement or tried to use it, and what has been your experience on those? So we're looking for these type of answers. Maybe the other people can take the cue from that. So we'll start this off with Madam Jayashree.
Yeah, so our work, we are working in a very specific area of adults with disability. So we have been working on using the technology not only for working in computers. Other sessions we have been able to manage through Zoom sessions. And again, I would say it all depends on the parents as a facilitator. So we are now fully dependent on the parents to facilitate the students in enabling them to join these sessions. And once they join, I think they are all absolutely thrilled, and then they have been able to come out and then engage themselves very beautifully. And to some extent, we are able to do that. And I think I would say around 3/4 of our student group are now fully engaged in whatever sessions we have been conducting. And it's going on like that, but I don't know how long it's going to be.
What are these sessions? Can you just describe one or two?
So one is, see, work from home option has come on computers. So there is a training going on, and the actual work also, it is a very apt work for slow learners and little able students in the intellectual disability space, where they around 15 students are now on training and on doing some work on, editing, and then the work is going for visually impaired braille purposes. So that work is a very specific work, and it's a very engaging work for our students. And then parents are also very happy with the way they are also able to, we are doing the training along with the parents, so that the parents are the first facilitators and monitoring the work. And then, that way, to some extent, we are able to come out with this training, and the work has been going on. And for the rest of the students who are working on products.
Sorry, Jayashree. So are we saying that earlier we were not using this method?
No, this specific work area came during the COVID time, actually. That's one lucky part of it. So, and that is one thing that made us think also how to start the training virtually. So that also was a very good opportunity for us to work, like, think about how to facilitate the training, streamline the training, come out with a proper system, and also connect with our trainers also. So assign, and all those things happened in this last 1.5 months. And then it's moving on properly now. So, but not all students are engaged like this because of their conditions. So the rest of the students, again, we have started with the Zoom sessions on some of the product making, say a bag making or something. We have created some videos, and we have created some, we are also doing Zoom live sessions on the same, whatever videos we have created, and trying to see how it goes. Now it just started recently, this last month only. So, but that also is catching up, I would say, because the engagement part of it, at least for 4 to maybe 3 to 4 hours, they are properly engaged. And the other, we are also tracking on their life skills, the day-to-day life skills. How are they able to, how the parents are also engaging them. We have been pushing the parents to, give them proper meaningful work rather than, just engaging them with something or the other. So that way we are tracking and giving all, in fact, we have put a lot of videos in our Facebook page actually. To that extent, I think it's going fine. I don't know, but it has to last. The steam has to last. I don't know how far it's going to last.
Jayashree, a quick question. In your organization, you're also making a lot of items.
Yes, products. Yeah, a lot of products.
Sold. But obviously, all this is not made by one person or one team. You need multiple people making it. So how would you be able to do that, or that activity has come to a standstill?
No. That is where we are now. See, even in a small bag making, it's like an assembly line. We were doing it. But now that the parents have become the facilitators, now we are requesting the parents to see in what all areas the gaps are there so that they are able to facilitate and fill that gaps.
Okay.
Yeah, so to that extent, so we are taking simple, not a very complex things for them to make also. So to that level, and also for the parents to facilitate, it will be say 70% by the students and the 30% facilitation by the parents.
So that means the making of these products has continued. There has been no stoppage in that.
Yeah, to some extent, not all the products, to some extent, because some of the things like we are onto weaving, but we are not. The looms are now in the center now, so we are not. But again, two of the one resource is a parent with her son. She is able to engage the son with the loom. She's carried away one loom, and then she's been working on that. So with all these very specific, efforts, we are able to push them to engage and then come out with something meaningful.
Okay. So any other new things or alternate ways that one is, of course, you used internet and communication and Zoom and maybe making products.
So now we have opened our center because since the day when the government said that your office can be open with some percentage of staff. So we did all the treatments and then hygienically, did the COVID treatment and then kept the cleaning and everything. So the center is now open now for 3 days and our resources take turns to come. And then so very specific training or any thing which parents need to come and, discuss. We have now opened up. Parents have been coming and taking all the any help or any discussion has to be done with the parent. They are able to come and then do and then go. So to that extent, we are keeping it active with the students and the new work on the computer where some editing work is going on. So we are calling the parents to come and then get the doubts cleared and then work on it.
Here, I would just like to ask Vijay from our team. Vijay, since you have just visited, gone to Dharwad and other places, so any insights as to how other organizations have tried to keep in touch with their beneficiaries, etc.? Any thoughts on that? You have to unmute yourself, Vijay. Unmute, please. Yeah.
Is Vijay there?
No, we're not able to hear you. Your computer audio. No.
Unable to hear me?
Yeah, you can come closer to the mic. Yeah.
So most people are using only webinars and video conferences. So that's how they are. But as
Can't hear.
Vijay, you're not audible.
not audible.
Not audible. A bit louder.
Yeah. So most people are using webinars and video conferences, to talk to their customers. So currently there is no other way, no physical contact, and many people are not even open offices. But I think the challenges of working with mental challenges is very high.
Okay. Okay. Not clear, Vijay. So we'll come back. So what about Sarah? What would you say about alternate ways?
So, like Vijay says, we are stuck with the online. We are doing our classes either through Hangouts or WhatsApp. Those of my students who do not have internet or do not have, smartphones, the trainer makes a one-to-one call with those students and follows up with parents. But a lot of our life skill training sessions and employment training sessions are happening online with the trainers coming into DIA and using the internet facilities at the center. The positive side of it all is that parents have been very actively part of these sessions and have realized the importance of the curriculum and the training, and so have actually really participated, and the students have made better progress. And the cooperation of the parents has made a big, huge difference to the program. Having said that, we have interns and volunteers also who are part of our program, and so they help us in creating material that can be used online. So we have an intern who created a digital library and has been uploading videos there as per the topics that we have given her, and then those topics are used with the students. So this is one of the ways that we have been using our volunteer engagement, as well as our, engaging our students. They have their goals for the quarter, and so making sure that they achieve those goals before we go on to the next quarter goals. So it's been a challenge for our staff to understand about technology. And so one of the things was that either they took home a system from DIA or they came to DIA and did the program.
Thanks. So would Dr. Vaishali and Sugandha also add to that?
Yeah, I'd like to. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, you're clear.
So I'm really grateful for ICT and IT, because without that, we wouldn't have been able to manage what we do. And we are a program that's not just in Karnataka. We've got about 66 centers in Karnataka, but we've got 475 centers in 25 states in India. So you can imagine how mind blown we would have been when this entire COVID thing happened. And 80% are in villages. So how do you give them laptops at home? How do you give them smartphones, as Sarah said? So what we did was, most of the people that we work with don't even recognize the alphabet. They're not able to retain the sound of an alphabet. But what they are really good at is doing visual matching processes. So what is data entry? We couldn't go into the other jobs that we do, like multimedia and artificial intelligence related work that our guys do. But we stayed with the visual matching processes. What is data entry? Data entry is looking at a reference, typing the same thing on the keyboard, and then making sure the same thing is on the monitor. So what we did here was, we replaced the keyboard with the newspaper. Okay, and what our guys did initially, because there is so many challenges with people with very low IQ. Cognitive is something that you've got to constantly keep them engaged to keep those cognitives going. So what we did was, we give them a reference. Initially, we started with words and then sentences, and they would cut out letters from the newspaper and paste it onto, again, the newspaper. So we were recycling all the time. And then after that, we got a huge volume of work. So, which is from Bombay Stock Exchange. And we didn't know how to take them through that, because these are huge forms of 1,500 fields. So again, we used, images that we sent to them of small portions of the forms, and they would write it down in a book. That's how we kept them in sync. But recently, what we did was, we took the trouble to actually take computers to the students, take it directly to their home. And so now it's become a little more, how would I say, they are absolutely in sync with what they would have been doing otherwise at Amba. Simultaneously, what we're doing is, we have made sure that, the shoe covers, the masks and all that, we bought it in large numbers and we started distributing it, so that should we start Amba. Unfortunately, Amba is in a red area in Bangalore, so we can't open very soon, but we are preparing for it. Many of my team are actually going there and making sure that sanitization and all that is happening on a regular basis, so that when we start, we don't have to go back 10 steps. But I find monitoring is the most important thing. Giving them work and not monitoring would be really detrimental. So on a daily basis, we've broken up our team to ensure that they have responsibility across the states in India. And in a day, they reach out to about 15 centers to make sure each person reaches out to about 15 centers, so that they're covering, all 475 of them in 1 week. So ICT is what's enabling us to keep things going. But recently I was telling Gauri, all this was fine. But what's overtaken the work and all of that is the fact that most of our families don't have enough medication. They don't have food. Karnataka is one of the few states where we saw only 1 out of those 66 centers that were having challenges with food. You know, they're not even getting rations, states like Maharashtra and all the others. But I won't digress. So we are focusing on that right now because, you know, that is equally important, if not more important, to sustain them first. Another way that we use ICT is most of our children are very distressed being at home. They've been so used to coming to their place of work and doing their work and, you know, being so engaged that their behaviors have started recurring. You know, most of the kids that we work with have huge behavior challenges. So we've used ICT again to counsel the children to be able to help their parents. So as a result, you know, we find that it's a very holistic thing that you got to do. It's not just about what you produce or what you, you know, the work that you do or the training that you do, but it's a lot more than that to be able to engage these kids, to be able to calm them down, to be able to have a two-way interaction, to be able to, you know, keep things going at home. Does that make sense to the rest of you?
That's definitely a way that.
I'm sorry, I ramble a lot, but I hope.
That's okay as long as the participants get alternate ways. But of course, the one thing that is really coming up is the use of technology, ICT, which has been.
We wouldn't have been able to manage otherwise.
I've done it otherwise, but so now you're doing it. But did anyone also try, Dr. Vaishali, for you also, did anyone see all the beneficiaries who come to the centers, etc., they have a particular pattern. They are used to a particular schedule. They're used to doing in so when you're doing this online, when you're doing it, did we attempt to do any?
Sorry, we didn't get that.
Yeah, didn't get the last part of your question.
I mean, the topic is, did we try out any to set up any new schedules or routines for the beneficiaries? And were they comfortable with that? Because their disruption happened of their schedule of their daily coming to the center, etc.
Right.
So now, the new environment that is the home.
I think that was the initial challenge that we had. You know, the fact that they thought they had done something wrong, you know, that's why they were not being sent out to Amba. Vaishali, go ahead.
Yeah. So, see, one of the things that we forget is the humble phone, which we no longer use for calling people, but we use for a lot of other things. I think there's someone talking on the phone, Swatika.
Now mute her. Mute my audio. I should take.
Maybe when we are speaking, we should switch off the mute hour.
So, so first thing, of course, it hit us the first few days when we gathered our wits to understand and realize that this was going to take some time. One of the first things that we did was we gathered our staff and all of them started calling up all the parents. I mean, obviously, we divided the entire beneficiaries into our staff. And the managers were in constant contact with the parents to assure them and, you know, to talk to them about what is happening and what can lay forward. So this meant that even people who did not have internet were in constant touch. It wasn't like they were left aside. That was point one. The other thing was, the second thing that we started was we did not start the core activities initially. We started with the other therapies. We started with music therapy and yoga therapy, and we started with recreational activities, dance and art. And so that was something that can easily attract children. Since we are basically working with children and young adults, it was something that got them easily attracted and into the groove of what things were happening. And the funniest part was, I mean, it wasn't funny at all. It was actually very endearing and very sweet, is that children were keeping time now. So they know when is their schedule. It took them all of 2 weeks probably to get used to this whole thing about, oh, I'm going to get my music auntie on screen and I want to attend her session. And, them telling parents that, oh, you better get Skype, you better, I mean, obviously to the extent that they could communicate. But this is what happened, and that is wonderful learning, isn't it? Learning doesn't have to be at schools or at centers. This especially I thought was a part going towards independence. And yeah, so that was something that I would like to add to everybody, what everybody else has said.
I just read, as I was researching for this, so I also read a couple of papers where they suggested some alternate ways how to engage with the beneficiaries. I mean, in a very general sense, each one will have to just pick it up what is applicable to in your programs. So some of the things that they said was that you should ask the group to watch a particular movie together, stream it at the same time, watch it at the same time, and then have a discussion around it. Take them to virtual tours. So tours could be like going to a zoo or going to a new place or a mountain. So there are lots of virtual tours which are there. So maybe participants can look at that as an activity from a learning point. So there are all these tools which are there and which are likely to come up, which are likely to proliferate more also as you go along. So you have to keep watching for those. So these can be built into your programs as you go forward. So let's.
Anil, just to interrupt you, we have Pradeep from PAPCP also online, so we can also ask him to give his views about alternate teachings.
Yes, alternate ways of engaging.
Yes.
Over to you. So please go ahead quickly because we have got a couple of three more questions, topics to discuss. So please go ahead, Pradeep.
So thank you, Anil, and thank you, Gauri. This is, I'm from an organization known as PAPCP, which is a parents association, and we deal with children above 18 years of age. As Vaishali ma'am was saying, and also Maria was saying, we did exactly the same things in the sense we started off with asking the teachers to interact with parents on a regular basis and also talk to students on WhatsApp. This became very interesting in the sense students started calling back the teachers on a very frequent basis. And so we had to slowly put a stop to it, put a break there because it was disturbing the teachers a lot. And the second thing that we did was we again started off with this music and yoga classes. This was really a hit because children really enjoyed doing the exercise online and also listening to the music teacher. And we also started off with a dance class, which again was quite interesting to the girl students. Unfortunately, the person who was taking the classes only wanted girl students on a trial basis. And so they were really interested in doing this dance practice also. The other thing we've started off recently is that we've started off computer classes on Zoom, in the sense you share your screen and the teacher asks you to type words and sentences. And so the student types these and the teacher is able to see it and correct it also. This is what we have started off. These are four or five things that we have started off online.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sarah, do you have anything to add in that? I think you didn't comment on that question, on that topic.
No, so we have done the same things. We have been I think the staff have been very, very innovative in looking up, finding videos and looking. So one of the things that I also had suggested was, to get a virtual tour of a store or mall and show them how to budget and shop for it and put it in their basket but not pay. So those are things that we have also kind of, looked at. And I think the positive side of this COVID is that it has enabled all of us to think out of the box and to start looking at how we could expose our students to so much more by using these virtual tours. I like that idea very much, and I think this the staff have been using some of those things.
Okay, thanks. So let's move to the another interesting, another most relevant topic, I would say, for discussion. How do we manage social distancing amongst the beneficiaries during this time with all the health advisories, etc.? Is it possible? And if it is possible, how much has it been made practical to be done? And if social distancing is not possible, then how can we minimize the risks? Any learnings, any suggestions? Um, I will start with you, Sarah, for this, because that's the topic that you had indicated that you could lead on that. Please go ahead, Sarah.
That's the topic that we are all brainstorming about. So one of the things that I posed to my staff was to start thinking about how, if we were to start from July 1st, how would they get, we have about 45-50 students, and we operate from a small space. How would they maintain social distancing? How would transportation be taken care of? Hygiene of the place, students wearing masks. It's not easy for us, all of us, to be wearing masks all the time. It's not easy. And putting certain processes in place. Some of the things that they have come up with is maybe each trainer has about 6 to 8 students, so dividing them into 3 or 4 batches of 3 and 4, and having either them come in a week, alternate weeks, or maybe morning and evening. We still have to brainstorm about the transportation issues, because that again is another. If they're coming by autos, those autos are packed like sardines. There is no social distancing. So would parents, then talking to parents and seeing, are they willing to drop and pick up rather than engaging autos? Because it has also affected parents financially in terms of, jobs and everything. And so looking at financials of the parents, looking at financials of the institute itself, to see how all these things, because again, for the institute, we need to put in a lot of added equipment in terms of masks, sanitizers all over the place, and making sure that the spraying is done. And so there's so many water issues. If you don't have drinking water and you don't have corporation water, you are getting water tankers coming in. Again, there are so many issues on so many levels that you look at. And so putting all these things down in a standard operating procedure is what we are now brainstorming every Friday with the staff, to start thinking, if I'm getting my student in and I'm accountable, how will I make sure that all these procedures are kept in place? So Jayashree says she has already started. So maybe Jayashree could share some things on how they are. I know staff are will going in, but if students are coming in, I have students who are wheelchair bound and need to be picked up and taken sometimes for therapy. So there also social distancing is not happening. Somebody having to wipe them out and give them their medication and set up their tiffin. So those are students we have taken a call that they will stay home and work from home, and we will have classes for them at home. So we have already made the call for students who have medical issues. Anybody with a medical issue and who is more prone and liable to pick up an infection quickly, we have said that we will not call them in. We will conduct classes for them online.
Yeah, Sarah, I'd like to say we are also thinking in the same line like you are saying, maybe call them for twice a week or thrice a week, and reduce the number of students, make groups, and then see the resource can themselves decide. But again, the transport issue, though, for us, it is always the parents' responsibility. But still, at this point, even if they are willing, still no one is clear if they are going to take a public transport. Again, I don't think any parent would do that also, first of all. And autos are also very, very unsafe now. And so at present, we are only calling the parents, not the students. Whichever parent want to come, and then not the student. We are not encouraging the students. Only the parents who have been working at home with the student. If they want to get any material, if they want to sit with the resource to clear any of the doubts or any of the things which they want to learn it again. So in all those things, and the training which is happening in the computer, the work which you people are also now doing, for them, if any parent is not very clear on the phone or on the call, So we have told them, please come to the center and then take whatever they, sit and discuss and then do it. So that is what we are doing. So we have very clearly said no students at this point, because there is no guideline from the government and we don't want to take any risk. And with the parents' willingness to come only, we are telling them. Those who really want to come and then sit here and then learn something and then go, for them we have been pushing this. So in fact, for at least for next, even in case if we open, we thought that the computer people who are working from home can continue to work from home.
Yeah.
So we don't
That's
want
what we're doing.
so that is what we have decided at this point. So there are even, and we are also waiting to hear from NIMHANS. We have a small computer center there at the rehab center. So I am waiting for those doctors to tell us on the guidelines if they can also help us to form some ideas, because they have to open their rehab center at some point. So our center is there also. So I am waiting to hear from doctors' point of view also what are all the things that we have to look forward to. Because we have to start going there also. Our staff is waiting to go there. We have a group there of around 10, 12 students who are working on computers there.
Okay. What about Sugandha? Yeah. You have to unmute yourself.
Unmute Sugandha, yourself.
We are very clear. We are not bringing our students back to the center till things are really very much better. Because you've got 154 people in a space of 4,200 square feet. It's impossible to do social distancing in that distance. And we are already doing work from home. We used the team viewer. I've got about 22, monitoring staff who every day, do the quality checks of their team using the team viewer AnyDesk, these remote access software that we have. And in fact, their accuracy rates are improving because of that, because it's more one-on-one now than what it was when they were at the center. And we've got quite a few of our students who've been with us, not students, my God, I shouldn't say this in front of them. We call them peer directors. So these are people who've been with us for 13 and 14 and 15 years. They are actually more accurate at doing QC than our mainstream people are. So they have taken on the responsibility also of doing quality checks. So very clearly, it will be, a very systematic kind of flow forward, where we'll start, we will continue to work from home and then very slowly bring in small batches, as everybody was saying, we haven't really worked that out as yet. We've decided to stay with this because they've all got adjusted to it, At 9, they start working and they leave off working at 5 in the evening. So whenever there are challenges, then we step in and speak to them using WhatsApp and all the other things. So it was disastrous initially, but it is getting better now. And in all the centers all over India, what we're doing is we're making sure that most of them have closed. The children have gone back to their homes. So we are trying to make sure that a small number are in sync with what we are doing, so that when we start, they would take the responsibility, because everything that we do, we don't have special educators at AMBA. It's all peers who are teaching peers. So that makes it easier for us to pick up. But across India, we've taken quite a few steps back. It is a bit of a disaster.
Here I would like to bring in Guru. So Guru, if you can unmute yourself and give some thoughts as to how you can handle this social distancing. Firstly, whether social distancing is really, there could be alternates like immunity building, etc. So could be a better option in this situation rather than say that I'm going to follow social distancing 100%. And anyway, in a country like India, whatever we may do, there is no question of 6 feet or 8 feet between two people all the time. So you're running a battle which is, okay, there's a guideline, but it's impossible, impractical to really take this forward. So are there alternates to social distancing?
Thanks, Anil, but I would look at a totally different view there. When you look at the context of children, it is so much more easier to discipline them than an adult. When I was driving down day before, I could see adults standing in a hotel and not bothered about social distancing. But in a more disciplined and a controlled environment, the children would have more social distancing than at home. At home, they don't listen to parents. but in a school they would possibly listen to Vaishali or Sugandhi much better. As I speak to you, I could just look at this office. Extremely well articulated social distancing everywhere. Nobody sits even 8 feet next to each other, and we have a lot of teenagers in the office. So I would look at a situation where people can come back to school, still maintain social distancing, because even 150 people with 4,000 square feet, 2 गज की दूरी नहीं हो सकती है, but at least 1 गज की दूरी हो सकती है. We could do class wise. First class comes in the morning, second class comes in the evening. They could do a mix and match, because children's discipline is not there sitting at home. The Indian education system has survived, even though you may call it as a strange system, but we have produced the best of the results in the world. With this strange system of discipline, people coming, stand in a queue, stand in a line, have an arm distance between each other. Children would be more better in a school than at home, is my thought.
Vaishali, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to counter that. Unfortunately, the kind of people we work with don't understand logical reasoning so well. Also, we don't believe in regimental disciplining. So it is counterproductive. So they will listen to you for a certain time. After that, there's going to be Bagavat. And that is not something that you want in the long term. So that is probably not the greatest of methods to follow. As we talking about, I mean, I'm talking about our situation over here, our sector, where there will be some children. So it's not a blanket statement. It's not a generalization that nobody is going to be able to understand it. But probably the majority of them may not understand it. The second more important point is it's not just about the understanding, but there's also the needs of the person. So here you're talking about, I like to talk about children in terms of their developmental age rather than their chronological age. So we may have grown-ups in there, you know, we may have 15-year-olds or something like that. But how much is their understanding? If their understanding is about 4 or 5 years old, they are still going to want to come and sit with you and, you know, look at your face and talk to you. And it is not possible in that case to just tell them, hey, look, there's COVID-19. COVID-19 doesn't make any sense to them. It's a virus which none of us can see. So that is something that we have to keep in mind all the time. And the third part is we'll just have to make a calculated decision about what is important, life or you know, I mean, that the basic survival or the continuation of our work process. And when it comes to children, I don't think even the parents are going to have to are not going to be in doubt about what they are going to be choosing. So like Sugandha was saying and Maria was saying, that what about the how do they even come to school? How do they come to the centers? There are lots of parents who are not who have lost jobs, so they are not financially. It is not possible for them to be able to manage social distancing public transport to get them. So, and this virus is terrible, unfortunately. So till the time we come to a point where we are able to find out some treatment options, I would rather choose child survival over wanting to get them to the center. As much as I would love to have them with me and, you know, talk to them and chat with them and play with them, I would not want to do that. We would rather work on how we will dissipate all our classes in a systematic manner. And again, I would want to reiterate is that this constant online is also not good for our children. It's not good for anybody. So to maintain that balance about how are we going to dissipate information and at the same time keep them occupied and keep them safe. So that is my take on it.
Okay, thanks. I think we are just going to run out of time shortly, but I have two more topics. But between the two topics, I'll pick up one topic to take an end. So I'll just read the topic. The two topics where one is on sustainability of corporate partnerships going forward. That's a completely a new, it may require a full session on its own. So I will drop that point and take the topic on what Sugandha wanted to take lead in this. That is to do with how do you really keep in sync with the learnings that you already have done before the COVID, and to make sure that all the learnings that you have imparted is not because you cannot replicate that at home level. So is there a danger that whatever you have taught will be lost, or the teaching that we are doing now is supplementing that? Is there any experience, or is there anything that the panel can say to the others that this is the way it is, or this is what it should be? Go ahead, Sugandha.
So it's hard for me to tell the others what they should do, what they shouldn't do, but I'm going to just share my experience in this, because we've been at this now for 16 years. You know, we started in 2004, and it took about 12 years to put this curriculum in place. And it's all around visual matching processes. It's around peer-driven training. It's using IT, ICT, monitoring on a regular basis. So initially we were quite baffled. And I think we've covered quite a bit of what I wanted to say in the earlier sessions. But what we realized was, in the past, when somebody took off for even 15 days or 20 days, when they came back, we had to restart the training. And that was what we were most afraid of. Can you imagine 8,000 people all over India, if they go back 20, 30 steps and we've got to bring them forward again? It would be disastrous, because it's taken so long for us to figure out what to do and how to do this with them. So, like I was beginning to say the last time, we use the newspaper as a tool, things that the parents have around them. We use that as a tool to be able to give them that experience of data entry using the newspaper and letters in the newspaper. But thereafter, we realized that the core team at AMBA were also beginning to forget what we had taught them. And this is people who were trained over 14, 15 years, 16 years. That would have been really disastrous. They were the guys who were doing the training, taking remote access all over India. So this was the second point I wanted to make. That's when we distributed the laptops to at least the hub, which is here in Bangalore. All our 154 people, they had their laptops. And one of you mentioned WhatsApp. WhatsApp is the only way out. So to make sure that they're not online all the time, because that can be disastrous for them, we give them work that they can do offline. And then they send it to us by WhatsApp. And then our team of peers and mainstream people then go one-on-one with them doing the quality checks. This way, we've been absolutely in sync. In the first month, we were really in distress. But thereafter, we've come and caught up with, where we were when the COVID started. So we realized that the other thing is most of the people who come to AMBA come using public transport. That is something that I don't know how we're going to resolve that. So that's the reason why I told you guys that we will stay with working from home. And only when things get back to normal to a certain extent that we bring them back into the work environment. Parents and the kids have become very much closer since the time the COVID, disrupt took place. And that has become a huge benefit for us, because what we have today is a huge resource of parents who have begun to understand what their kids are doing at work, whereas earlier they didn't. Everyone believed that they were using the computer like you and I. Now they understand that they are using the computer functionally. They don't have the same capacity that you and I do. So the kind of support that we are getting in from parents is also going to keep us in sync with what is happening. I don't see too much of a disrupt happening. And luckily for us, we were
So that's an added bonus, the parents getting to know what.
It's a huge volunteer base that we have today of over 150 parents, I would say, who are available, who are actually interactive with us. They are interacting every day with us, wanting to know what more they can do with the kids. And most of them are so grateful that they don't have to deal with the disruptive behaviors of the children. They are so occupied that, you know, they don't have to worry about that. And of course, part of the Amba core of what we do is we start with a warm-up and we close with a cool down, which is something we've taught the parents, and they do it at home before we get on to the process of work, which really, you know, our guys are adults, all of them. You know, they range from, say, 18 years to about 56, 60 years also, but they're all babies inside, you know. Like Vaishali said, their development, the average age at Amba is about 8 years. You know, even though we've got people who are practically, you know, of the retirement age. So I think what we have in place is what is absolutely necessary for Amba. And I hope you guys can pick up from there, because social distancing is important. There's no question. We've already lost special educators in Ujjain, and we have so many people in our workforce who have come down with the COVID virus and are, you know, and are going through the distress. So I think we cannot be complacent about that. We've got to be extremely assured. So that's all I have to say.
So in Amba's case, there is no loss of learning, etc. So it's only improved.
There will be no loss because we have created a.
Okay. What about Jayashree? What would you say?
Yeah, so the similar thoughts only, like what Sugandha said initially, we were quite concerned on, you know, suddenly, you know, you're at a loss to, you know, just think about how to, you know, get back to some level of normalcy. And we have put in so much of effort and so much of time and energy and a lot of resources working on to get the students to a level of working, and then happily they were delivering something. And unless they are onto continuous, you know, interaction and learning, they tend to forget immediately. Say 2 days of absence because of their health, if they get back to the center, we have to start again from what they have learned, and then we have to keep them, make them learn it again, like she said. So with all that, I think the technology is only helping us, and then now with our resources, continuously in touch with the parents, and similar like what she said, we have been also doing that. And so to that extent, I could say that they are continuing to, I think not much of loss, I would say, on their learning. But socially, they are missing, you know, their behaviors and other things and all that is where is more concerning, especially, you know, interaction with the opposite sex, sexual things and all, you know, like when they get to meet their friends, they tend to put their hands on their shoulders, and then they become so happy. All those things, I think you will miss it, and social distancing is one thing. So how are we going to manage with all these things? I'm at a loss.
Can I just speak for a minute? One of the things that we do is in the evening, we get onto WhatsApp. You know, my entire team does that. And we chat with 4 or 5 kids. I think you're allowed only 4 calls because they cannot maneuver into Zoom. So we just use the telephones, and all of them now, we've made sure those who don't have smartphones also have smartphones. But we are managing very well in the hub because it's in an urban space. And you know, you have all the benefits of being in an urban space. But I must tell you that it is going to be 20 steps back before we come forward in rural India, where 80% of Amba centers are.
So Jayashree, one of the things that we also do is we have happy hour once a week.
Okay.
And so on Hangouts, we get them all to connect on Hangouts, those who have and those who, you know, are able to. It's slowly picking up. It's still a challenge. They're still not able to figure out how to click on that blue link.
They call you, don't call them.
Yeah.
They call you.
And so So that is something nice. I tell them, keep your snack and your coffee ready, and then I give them a list of questions. I'll say, ask each other questions and talk to each other. And so that's something that
Especially with people with
slowly
autism,
picking
it's a
up.
bit more of a challenge. Don't you think
Yes.
so, dear? I mean, sorry, Sarah.
Yes, correct. Yes, and so one of the things is also that we have had autistic students who have missed Diya so much that it has been, they've had a meltdown and had to be admitted into Niman, and so that's the flip side of not having them come in, because getting them to look at the phone and give eye contact to their trainer and hear the trainer's voice was a challenge. They didn't want to. All they had in mind was, I have to dress up and go to Diya. And so he would not even listen. And so his meltdown happened, and this is the second time. Once happened during the Christmas break, again during the COVID.
Was that Praveen by any chance?
No, Moses.
Praveen is okay?
Praveen is okay. So it is Moses. And so he's admitted back again into Diya, So those are the rare cases that are really missing the trainer and the voice and the schedules that we've had. Whereas at home, it's also because of parent cooperation. The parents not being very internet savvy and not being able to, get that child to kind of sit down and look at that phone and listen.
So I would say that I think the students who are not able to perform or not able to join the learning or continue with the learning, it's due to one of the reasons is parent inability to spend time with them due to various reasons. I don't blame the parents also, but some of them are working, some of them don't have the facility of, they have only one gadget where the mother has to work, so she can't spare that to the child. So all those issues are there. But still, I think the main thing is the social distancing area. I don't know how we are going to win over that and then make our children learn that and then still get on to coming back to center also.
So for all of you, there is, since you're all going to be big on technology, I think the day is not far where you can really project images of your guides and mentors on your trainers straight into the living room of where the students and children are.
That's been happening now, right now, parallel session is going on now.
Working.
So parallelly, my people are taking one session now with the students. So they are there already in their rooms, talking to my people, and then that's where they are catching up with them actually.
That is okay. But what I'm saying is that you'll have technology where you can really make the image of the person sit in that.
Improvements. Improvements in technology. But if we can just go to this sustainability and corporate partnership for just a second, how are you guys dealing with it? Because most of our partners are retracting from supporting you because of the COVID, right?
Yes. So
how are you guys dealing with it?
In a nutshell, let me just take this question. So it is going to be a challenge. 50 to 60% of the money of the corporate is already spent on COVID or Prime Minister cares.
I would say a larger percentage, yeah.
Maybe. So data will be there, but whatever. So that's really going to be there. And again, you're going to support programs which are relating to COVID. So that's everyone is going to be focusing on that. So the only solution would be that you will have to position your programs and projects in such a way that it is contributing to or it's an effect or to relief and rehabilitize, etc. on the COVID-19. So I've got a whole set of points that I wanted to really discuss. I think
we do this another day so that we can.
I think that's a topic that is not going to go away. It's always going to be there. So I think we will do a topic.
And also, can you invite any of the corporate leaders to join this so that we can hear from their perspective of looking at how they are going to spend their CSR funding.
Do that. And let's, Gauri, any questions? Yes. I can see some questions there. One question which I just see right on top of is, I would like to know how everyone is motivating the staff and the team who are working from home.
As such, here the staff is playing a crucial role. We are talking about the beneficiaries. We also need to think about the staff who are, giving that support. So how Just a question to the panelists. How are you supporting the staff or
Just
motivating
making sure we pay their salary at the beginning of every month.
Okay.
Because I find that they're working much earlier than they used to before.
Yes.
We're starting by 7:30 in the morning, and sometimes I see messages happening even at 11 o'clock at night. That's how committed they are, you know, our mainstream staff. So one thing that we were very fortunate, just before this lockdown, we were able to, you know, get a certain amount of unrestricted funding that came in. So, you know, I've been able to pay them their salaries. That's because everyone has their own responsibility also, right? Their own personal responsibility of their home and their families. So that's how, and of course, appreciating them all the time, you know.
Vaishali?
Yeah, so I just want to step back from the COVID situation and say that, you know, I think the people you work with is like your family. So how have you developed the relationship with them? Not now, but earlier. And people work for various reasons, but one of the reasons is also for the love of the work that they do and the respect that they get. So have we been doing that? Have we been giving them that? And so that's something that we have to cultivate. So it's a lesson, right? Going forward, that's something that we have to cultivate. And I mean, talking about Tamahar, we're so happy that they are people are calling me up saying that, you know, we want to start intervention sessions. We'll do it online. We'll do it on the phone. Just let us just start working. It doesn't matter. Cut our salaries. If you think that you're not going to get enough funding, you just cut our salaries. Doesn't matter. But don't stop anything. Don't stop the programs. I'm guessing that it is more from the love for the work that they do and the love that they are giving back to us, because that is what we have cultivated. It sounds like I'm patting our back, but I mean, that's probably a kind of learning, right? There is going to be attrition. There are going to be people who are not going to be able to withstand things for whatever reason. We can't be judgmental on that, but I think that is probably one of the things that we have to consider. So even going forward from here, that's something that we can keep in mind and keep cultivating.
I would also presume that people realize at this point of time that their need to do is much greater than what it was earlier. So that itself would be a great motivator for all of them.
But eventually putting food on the table for their own families is as important, right? So, you know, while all the respect and all that is a great point, you know, and we've had no attrition at all, but it's really important. I remember in the first month, I gave them the first 2 salaries, you know, 2 months salary in advance, because, you know, they had to prepare for things. They had to make sure, like us, we were buying rations for 2 months. They had to do that also, you know, so the reality is a totally different thing. You know, I totally agree with you, Vaishali. You know, you made a great point, and having the respect of your team is amazing. But the reality is they have to put food on the table. They have to sustain themselves also. So we were just lucky we had the money. I'm just so grateful.
I could gather from this talk is that the parent support has been overwhelming in this particular COVID time. And I see the parents are understanding what you people are delivering to the children, to the students, and to the adults. So that is the beauty of this hard times, what we are going through. Secondly is cognitively also the parents are helping their children to participate in each and every activity. So I would say this online, what we are doing through the Zoom, through WhatsApp is really helping the families to be happy together. And that is what the vision and mission of most of our NGOs are. And I would say that let's keep doing the good work. And I'm sure we will see a long way to go. And we at Vardhan are always there to help.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Gauri.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All of you at
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gauri. Thank you so
See you all.
Thank you all of you for participating. Thank you.
Yeah.